we're very concerned about what's been happening with our children in schools. Jojo, there you are.
Yes, indeed. It's me again.
Great to have you, Joseph. We wanted to talk. I know a lot of us, Dawn is on here, Erica's on here. I told Erica that my kids are going to be a lot dumber after all of this because I'm a terrible teacher. But those of us who have children are trying. I'm a terrible teacher of children. I'm good at grown-ups, but not children, right? Um, that we are trying to kind of homeschool these kids, um, but they're being supported and facilitated by their schools. You organize not only with Black Lives Matter, but also with Students Deserve. And we know that the young people that you work with, Broseph, somebody put Broseph, hey Broseph, the young people that you work with are also very kind of frustrated by the fact that some teachers are using this as an opportunity to give the children more assignments rather than acknowledge that, this is a terrifying time for everybody, but children especially. And this is not the time to be trying to hold children to higher standards or be overly rigorous with their education. The fact that they can survive through this time, that they're maintaining their sanity through this time is already a major feat. And so we'd love to hear from you about what's happening with our children's education, what's happening with public education. I know I was talking with a teacher earlier today who's also concerned about the idea of making quote unquote e-learning, which is not really happening. Anybody who has kids at home knows that their kids are really on TikTok. That these schools are thinking about how to make it permanent. I know my university is already talking about making fall semester online only as well. And so they haven't committed to it, but this is a conversation that they're having. So can you just lay out for us what we're dealing with in terms of education and how do we protect public education in this time?
Absolutely. So there's a number of issues in terms of educational rights that this current situation has brought up. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, the most obvious is that schools are closed, right? And that students don't have access to go to school every day. And that means a number of different things for, a number of different students. Doc, you raised a really important point about online education, right? And about the different rigors that's putting, or that, teachers are putting students through. There's a number of different technology and programs that students have to have. And sometimes students don't have access to those, right? Just in addition to the difficulty, right, that some students have even learning online, right? We know students have different learning styles. It's very hard for some students to process some of the stuff that's going on, right? Especially if there's other things going on with your family. We know LAUSD, 80% of students are eligible for free or reduced lunch, right? And so many of these students are coming from low income or no income families, right, where there's so many other issues that are hitting them at the same time, and teachers are essentially just tacking on assignment after assignment in some cases onto these students that it's not even realistic for them to be able to complete, right? I think it raises a whole host of other issues. I mentioned, right, the 80% of students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. The first day that LAUSD did meal distribution from their grab and goes, there was 30,000 meals. And then by the end of the first week, there was 250,000 meals being served in a day, right? So we know that there's a huge number of folks who are needing healthy food, right? Hopefully this is filling some of that need, but we know that it's not reaching everybody, that not everybody has the ability to even go to these centers. We also know another educational right connected to some of the things that we're talking about earlier. Some of these grab and go distribution centers for food in South LA, right? Specifically, Dorsey High School is one of the grab and go food distribution centers. We've seen that Dorsey is being much more heavily policed than some of the grab-and-go food distribution centers that are not in South LA, right, or areas that don't serve a high number of Black or Latinx or low-income students. We also know, right, that the government has been spending on a whole other scale, right, from the federal scale as well, far more money on policing than they are to try to address the issues that are coming up with education, right? We know that students who have special education or other needs have a much harder time getting access to those services now that schools are closed, right? We know that many students, right, especially if you're living in a house with multiple folks, multiple families, whatever, folks don't have a space even, right, to be able to do some of this work, don't have the technology or the reliable internet connection to be able to do some of this work. If we're talking about standardized testing, right, especially when we talk about specifically our seniors, I know your daughter is graduating. Congratulations, by the way, got accepted into Howard. That's awesome. Tom D-Way about to be a bison. Hey, hey, back to the East Coast. That's awesome. Sorry for that interjection. But definitely got to give her some love. But yeah, we know that for our graduating seniors like Tom D-Way, right, who are trying to take the SAT or trying to take the ACT or trying to take AP tests or other standardized tests, right? They don't have access to the training or the education that they would need to be able to succeed on these tests, right? And so there's a whole host of issues related to educational rights that we are right now in the process of working with students, reaching out to the teachers union as well. Cecily, as you know, was supposed to be on tonight, who was just this year, just recently voted in as the new president-elect, the first woman of color and a Black Lives Matter member to be the president of the teachers union in Los Angeles. So we've been working really closely with them to try to push the district, especially to provide more services for students who need it, right? I also want to lift up that there's a lot of teachers, right, who are doing really dope things for their students, right? We know we have some really powerful teachers within the Students Deserve Network, one of whom joined us today in case there are any questions for classroom teachers. Princess Reese, who's a middle school teacher at Hollenbeck, but has been doing really great work and trying to help teachers humanize students, right? Trying to help teachers give students the resources that they need. But it's also hard on teachers, right? Thinking about how teachers who have, hundreds and hundreds of students that they're responsible for, how they're supposed to interact with all these students in a one-on-one basis online, right? How they're supposed to respond to all these students' educational needs. So there are many teachers like Princess, like other folks who are trying to do this work, right? But there also needs to be some pressure to put on LAUSD, put on the city, on the state, on the federal government to kind of address some of these educational issues as well.
Right.
So those are definitely some of the things that we're thinking about, and obviously continuing to think about the issues that our homeless students and families are facing, the issues that our undocumented students and families are facing, and other folks, right, who may not only not have access to these issues, but be afraid or unable to, or targeted or stigmatized if they try to get access to some of these resources that they need. So continuing to try to organize to find out what all of these issues are, right? As as this process goes, there's been more and more updates day by day on some of the difficulties that students and families are facing. We know that as it stretches on longer and longer, as more folks, will likely lose their jobs, that it's going to cause even more hardships on students and families. And there's a lot of organizing to do to make sure that we're fighting for our youth and fighting for the educational rights that we need.
Right, right. One of the things that I've been pushing, and I think students are also pushing, is the end to kind of really repressive Tony and grading systems, right? So let's just have everybody pass this semester, right? If we can survive this, like state what the hell we're experiencing, people are saying, oh, this is one of the worst things we've ever seen in our lifetime. No, this is one of the most extreme catastrophes, maybe the most extreme catastrophe a nap during the day, but at nighttime I'm not sleeping. So that's at least anxiety if it's not fear. If we are anxious or afraid, then what do you think your 10-year-old is feeling? What do you think your 13-year-old is feeling? What do you think your 6-year-old is feeling? And so maybe now is not the time for us to be saying, do you have proper subject verb agreement, right? Did you finish the Frankenstein novel, which is what Tandiwe is supposed to be reading right now? And so I think that we need to be real clear that maybe there's a demand. All our children pass, and when we get out of this, they get extra enrichment to catch them up to where they need to go. Because after fifth grade math, I can't help them no more, right? And that's kind of what we need to be thinking about. We also need to be thinking about what are our teachers doing. Our teachers are also people. Their children are also at home, right? And so how are we supporting our teachers? How are we remembering that beyond all of this, we are beings and wrapping our arms around each other as human beings? And so I think that we need to start thinking about, again, we started this session off by talking about what can we imagine and what can we usher through as these oppressive regimes are trying to usher shit through. I'm convinced Zoom is doing all this stuff because it wants to have access to $1 billion industry in online learning, right? So I'm convinced that's why they lifted the 40-minute maximum use, right? So I think it's important as they're putting forward their agenda, let's think about what our agenda is. Somebody put in here that we should think about lifting SAT and ACT requirements, right? Let's think big. Let's think about like public universities. How do we make them public again, right? How do we make public universities completely accessible to anyone who wants to go? If you can't hang, you can still flunk classes, but they're completely accessible and their tuition, that's what they were founded to be. And so I think that as we're talking about protecting our rights, it also means being visionary. And I'm sorry for talking so long and getting on a soapbox, JoJo, but do you have any last comments to this?
Absolutely.
And if we can bring Nana back on.
Absolutely. Just the last thing I would say is that some of this work has already happened in some other school districts, right? Natomas Unified School District in California, right, outside of Sacramento, has already said that that work for the rest of the school year will be focused on student learning and not grading, and that students who need to raise their grades will have those opportunities, but that students' grades won't drop from current levels, right? So that we're seeing that some other school districts are doing some things right, and we just need to, again, amass the power, right, the people power and the pressure on these systems to make that happen here in LA as well.
Can we use that as a way, as something to push this forward for LA?
Absolutely.
Does Students Deserve have any plans, and how can people connect with your work?
Absolutely. So right now we are developing a list of student-related demands, and if folks are interested, folks, obviously we represent students throughout LAUSD. Holla at a teacher, holla at myself. Doc, I don't know how we can share contact info or stuff, but if anybody's interested in the comments, just let me know. Teachers, students, parents with children, or follow us on Instagram at LA_Students Deserve. But definitely want more folks to get involved in this movement, because again, we need to build this power and build this pressure on these systems.
Somebody typed, "This is a time for Palo Fide, not Common Core." Exactly.
Right.
All right. Thanks so much, Joseph.
Thanks, Doc.
Can get Nafi in. We're gonna say goodbye to Joseph real quick.